Hello and a very warm welcome to the brand new edition of Policy Watch. I'm Kriti Mishra. The Union Cabinet has approved 100% FDI in the sale-bound Air India by NRIs. The investment would be allowed through the automatic route. The government on January 27th invited expression of interest from prospective buyers of Air India and two of its subsidiaries. The government will make public the names of shortlisted bidders in the first round of bidding by March 31st. The national carrier has been making losses for long, and as part of revival efforts, the government has decided on its disinvestment. Saddled with a debt of around 60,000 crore rupees, the airline has been making losses to the tune of 20 to 25 crore every day. And for more on this, I'm joined by Dr. Sanat Kaul, Chairman, International Foundation for Aviation, Mr. Ankur Bhatia, Member CII Committee on Civil Aviation, and Ganpati Subramaniam, Senior Journalist. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, all of you. Dr. Kaul, let me come to you first. The government has decided that foreign investment in Air India would be at par with other scheduled airline operators. What was the existing FDI policy in airlines, and what are the changes now?
Well, FDI policy was 49% foreign. Now it's 100%. But let me give you a background that in 1944 there was the Chicago Convention, which is the basis for modern airline system, commercial airline system. And there were three conventions that were signed. One was the Chicago Convention itself. Then there was the air transit agreement and one more agreement. Now these things, in these agreements, in the other two agreements, there is a mention of a phrase called substantial ownership and effective control. Now what they say is that the whole system of bilateral international travel by commercial airlines will be based on national airlines. Airlines which are considered national and national registered in that country, and nationalism of that airline will be determined by substantial ownership and effective control by the nationals of that country. So it is imperative that if a foreign airline invests 100% in Air India, then it will violate the rule of substantial ownership and effective control. Therefore, to my best judgment, anybody who is investing in Air India has to have 49% domestic ownership. Now that can be done in many ways with OCIs and NRIs and others. You know, how it is managed would be a matter for financial and legal luminaries to work it out. But this is not going to be an airline which can be owned 100% by a foreign registered airline abroad if it cannot prove substantial ownership and effective control. So to that extent, we are in a way not that open about the FDI.
So the decision is in consonance with the SOEC norms. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
But moving on, Mr. Bhatia, last time Air India failed to elicit interest of strategic investors. Will it appear more attractive now?
Well, you know, first of all, if you look at the asset by itself, the aviation market, the slots, the infrastructure, what the airline has, of course, there is, you know, phenomenal value to the asset as per se. At the two issues. One is the current state, which needs to be looked into by an investor, and the second is the current timing. I think timing here is more critical right now because of the ongoing COVID-19 situation. I think it's one of the worst times aviation has seen in the last, you know, whatever, in the past. And it might be difficult to swing cash flows. It might be difficult for people to start concentrating on this at this particular hour and time. Having said that, the opportunity is great, and given the right circumstance, given the right policies, given the right package which the government will put in, it is a great asset for anybody to come and take in. Of course, the markets and the industry is bound to come back for sure. I think this period is temporary. And people will look into it, but just that the timing right now is 15th of March. You mentioned maybe not that the airlines are actually concentrating right now on their own issues, sorting their issues out right now. Maybe that needs to be looked into.
Mr. Subramaniam, timing is not right?
Absolutely. I want to give one small example of Jet Airways. A lot of effort was being made to get some buyers to revive Jet Airways. Nothing has happened. Jet Airways is a much smaller problem as compared to Air India. So if there are no buyers for Jet Airways at this point, I would really appreciate this government if they manage to complete this program successfully, because the situation is really bad. As Mr. Ankur Bhatia said, airlines all over the world are now had their hands full with lots of problems related to coronavirus. I saw an IATA estimate which says that the global revenue loss this year would be around 100 billion. 100 billion is huge, which means that will leave no airline in 2020 this year with any profit. Or maybe in India 2020-2021 financial year, no airline will be able to show any profits. In such circumstances, how are they going to bid for a new asset? But the government is trying its best. This FDI policy change that you mentioned for NRIs is one of those steps. They have already taken a number of other steps. The group of ministers headed by Mr. Amit Shah is doing everything possible to make sure that this time Air India disinvestment is a success. But the situation is very difficult right now. So therefore, it will be very, very appreciated so much all over the world if India manages to do this. And one important thing for that is what Mr. Sanat Kaul said about the bilateral rights. Because the substantial ownership and control is very important, because the bilateral rights will come with Air India only on the basis of this condition. So this is one of the basic assets of Air India, these bilateral rights. So therefore, the policy has to be tweaked at the same time, tweaked in such a way that ownership control issue is addressed and the bilateral rights lie with Air India. So therefore, very trying circumstances, and the government is really fighting it very hard to make it a success.
So let me try and understand. You're saying the policy has to be tweaked in such a manner. Dr. Kaul, what do we do further now to make it more attractive?
Well, it's very difficult to say. I mean, you can take out all the debt, including the current debt of the aircrafts, and then sell it as a running thing. Maybe it might attract somebody, because somebody who's got deep pockets can buy it. And who would be interested in buying, basically, if you look at it? Domestically, I don't think there are enough funds available or interest. It can be either some airline from the Gulf or from the East, which will get a good. India offers a very good outbound traffic. It's a growing traffic. It's very healthy traffic. Of course, this coronavirus has disrupted it, but in the long term, it's a very good traffic, and therefore, Air India will provide them so many airports, 50 to, maybe they're talking about new 100 airports. So we will provide them to suck out the Indian traffic and take them to their hub and then take them beyond. So that's one way I can look at it, that is a long-term investment in an airline like Air India, which is otherwise a good airline. But otherwise, it's very difficult to see how somebody is going to come forward with the funds. No, it actually reminds me of 2001 when 9/11 took place in New York, and 2 weeks before that, Air India was practically sold. It was sold. I will not take the name now in this on the TV, but it was sold to a consortium. And while they were negotiating with the government on certain details, 9/11 took place, and one of their partners withdrew. After that, the other partner, the Indian partner, was asked to locate another airline. Not a single airline in the world would come forward, because the things were so bad for the airline sector, like they are now. So, unfortunately, the timing is also extremely bad for the airline sector. So let's hope for the best, unless they are going to change and defer the timing.
You mentioned COVID-19, and let me get an industry perspective on that. Mr. Bhatia, as ITA has said that globally, airlines would lose around $113 billion, and it is also said that Air India's privatization would be quite difficult. What kind of impact are you foreseeing of coronavirus on India's civil aviation space?
Well, as of now, international bookings are cancelled by nearly 90%. Domestic bookings are down by 40%. So, obviously we will see a negative growth in this particular month. This particular quarter again will be very difficult for airlines to work on, and given the lockdown condition, which I think is right, I think it's better to lock it down, eradicate, and then resume operations. because otherwise there's one odd case left, and if you don't lock down, then it comes back and pops back again. Now, this time of the year is the peak time for Indian inbound travel as well. March is the time where all the conferences are held. It's the time where all the tourists come in. And it's very unfortunate. I think everything has got affected with this particular instance. Hotels, the overall tour and other infrastructure around it. So everything has got affected with this particular thing. Now, would this be, there's some things which will be conferences and stuff, it might be rebooked later on. But leisure travel, which is supposed to happen at this time, I would not come back again. So we would tend to lose a lot of money with that. I think the predominant effect is on airlines because obviously they've got fixed costs. They've got fixed costs for aircraft, they've got fixed costs for crews, they've got fixed costs for all the other infrastructure they have around the world of doing that. And I think there is no way that you could actually dismantle that for a couple of months. I mean, they need to pay that out, the leases as well. And it's very, very difficult time for them for doing that. If I were to just, compare that to 9/11, at times of 9/11, there was a fear for people not flying. Of course, there was a shutdown for a day, 2 days, 3 days, but now they're shut down for a month. So, you can well imagine that the kind of losses, what you just, what has been quoted by IATA right now, I think is just the beginning of it. It would get worse before it gets better. That's what my opinion is.
So you wanted to make a point, Dr. Kaul?
No. I mean, I fully agree with him. What happened in 9/11, it's 19 years, it's happening again. And Air India is getting sold at the same time. It's sort of ironic, but it's happening, in my view.
And we don't even know where it ends, and let's see how resilient we become. But Mr. Subramaniam, this is another attempt by the government on Air India's privatization. It has been in the red for a very long time. The government has taken several steps and measures. Has the government removed all the hurdles, or there are stumbling blocks on the runway?
See, so far in the history of disinvestment, Air India has been the most difficult case, and more so in the second attempt because the losses are mounted. And what do you do in a situation where you have so much losses and where you don't have any hope, at least for a few years, to just turn around the airline and make it profitable? It is possible, as Mr. Sanat Kaul said, it is possible, but it's going to take time because the size of the problem is huge. In case of Air India, the number of employees and then the commitments the airline that already has. So government is trying its best through the SPV by transferring a lot of losses, accumulated losses to that, and also trying to see that some assets can be sold and adjusted through the SPV, etc. Otherwise, it will be impossible to sell this airline. The government has tried, made it possible only through these kind of SPV arrangements and other management issues. So therefore, I see the FDI policy tweak as one of those attempts, one of those measures which will make Air India a sellable proposition. But the situation is unprecedented and we are quite unlucky. Which are the areas which have very good traffic, especially in the context of India? Southeast Asia.
Yes.
Was affected by coronavirus. Then we have the Gulf region, again affected so badly by coronavirus. All airports are closed, planes are sitting on the ground, and there are no passengers. So sentiment is against the sale now, but the government can defer, take it, give it more time. As Mr. Ankur Bhatia said, it's not going to be a permanent problem. It will maybe get worse and then finally get better. So maybe we can time it better and also see what are the other things possible. Like, because now, right now, the attempt should not be to generate some revenue through the sale. Even if nothing is generated, it's fine. The most important thing is to make the disinvestment a success. It's a very big challenge before the government and they are fighting it very bravely. Civil Aviation Minister Hardeep Puri has been saying that yes, we will find buyers, and then one buyer could be, say, Indian Airline, which also has a joint venture, etc.
Yes.
Or maybe there are other buyers which we do not know about. So if they, in this trying circumstances, if they make a success out of it, full marks to them.
And the government has already signaled that it may extend the deadline for EOI. But another important point that you made, that was about employees. Dr. Kaul, the unions have already dug in their heels. The new management or the successful bidders will have to deal with the unions. What is it that the government can do at this point in time to assuage the concerns of the employees?
You know, it's interesting question because I was involved in 2001 when the first sale of Air India was taking place. And at that time, the unions were discussed with. There was a lot of interaction, and they had finally all agreed to come around. They felt that their best hope is in a divestment of Air India and a new management. In fact, well, now I'm giving the name, but they actually went to Ratan Tata, I'm told, some of them, and to welcome him and request him to become chairman and so on. So that is the level at which the unions behaved at that time. Now the unions are not like that. Now why? I don't know. Management of unions is important, and it's okay to say government employment is more secure, but when the airline is going to close down, where's the security? So you need basically to look at the future, and I don't know why the unions are behaving like this now. I think there hasn't been enough dialogue with the unions.
So what is the way ahead?
Well, way ahead is nothing. You have to divest it. There's no other way. So you have to talk to unions. If the unions protest, I don't know. I mean, what can they do? You can close down the airline. They all lose their jobs. There is no other alternative today, and the unions have to become more progressive in their thinking. Why have they dug their heels? I have no idea. Perhaps there's been not sufficient dialogue with them. That's the only thing I can think of, because they should be looking forward to the divestment. Yes, once this takes place, maybe the assurance is maximum for a year for retention of jobs. But after that, the good ones are kept. And some of them will get their pay package, they'll get a golden handshake or something. So I don't see anything, why the unions are behaving like this.
So there has to be more dialogue. But talking about the growth trajectory, Mr. Bhatia, we've seen what happened with Kingfisher, then Jet. Does that raise question on privatization of Air India?
See, I think, whatever said and done, what we need to look at first is what the base market is, what we're looking into. And that's India. That's 1.3 billion people. That's a market which is currently having 110 to 150 million travelers. I personally think that the actual travelers are 30 to 40 million, because all the people take multiple trips out. Now, a market where only 1% or less than 1% of the population actually is flying gives a huge potential for growth. It gives a huge potential for the future growth for them. And Air India gives a good foot in the door for anybody who wants to explore and be in this market. Now, the aviation market, unfortunately, extremely sensitive to all these outside, issues such as what is happening right now. People who are in this play field, they know about this. They know about the business and how they are actually to be run. Unfortunately, if you've seen over the history, they've been success. They've been, I don't think lots of airlines have been able to survive. I mean, the largest was Pan American, which obviously did fold up as well. Now, these issues are going to happen with airlines personally, because obviously when times like these, hard times like these come, very difficult to sail through, and the bigger the operation, the bigger the problem is, because at the end of the day, those costs are fixed. You can't do anything about those costs in that regard. Coming back to the point, I think it's rightly said that there is the opportunity, which is the opportunity is what is of value right now. Now, given that how do you evaluate that value? Even if it is dismissed at zero cost or zero revenue to the government right now, it's 30 crores of loss per day. That's what the exchequer is actually paying. So let's say if it is done, just the 10 days, costs gives the government the thing to save 250, 300 crores.
But we're talking about the civil aviation space, and we are also seeing a continuous surge in the traffic as well.
Right. So there is definitely a surge, because obviously the numbers, the base numbers are very, very low. Now, that surge currently is happening with the domestic skies as well as international, based on pricing which is superbly good, because even now, unfortunately, the situation right now, you could get a ticket from Delhi to Bombay in 2,700 rupees going tomorrow night. Now, at 2,700 rupees, you can't make money. The dollar being at 74 rupees and the levels of where we are right now, I don't think you can make money, but you can't do anything about it, because you rather fill up the seat with a passenger rather than fly that that seat empty. So there is the surge in the numbers of the growth of numbers is definitely there, and is definitely because of the great prices being available intra-India for people to fly. That's why you see those numbers coming in. Is that something which you'd want to cash on when you're doing a project like Air India? I don't think so, because that's a long-term strategy of what you're doing at. You need to get there at the right pricing levels. Can the market sustain at the right pricing levels? Yes, as long as the market gets back normalcy, as long as the market gets to the right pricing, and all these, it's cleared up. Definitely, there's a positive growth through that. Now, that process for anybody to take over is not overnight's process. That process is longer than, I would say, one fiscal year or a couple of fiscal years. You need to have that much deep pockets to actually sustain those losses in order to come out of that. Now, that is what the investor would need to look into. That, can I do that? Is that something which I want to do with my money, personal money? If there's a non-resident Indian, there are other avenues to invest as well. Now, you need to compare that with other opportunities for an investor to come in. I mean, obviously, a non-resident Indian, if he wants to put that much amount of money on those things, of course, I mean, if he's keen enough, why not? I mean, for doing that. But also what has happened is that the equity markets have crashed as well, globally as well. So all these airlines and all these, people who are there, their values have eroded across them. So for them to leverage money or to get equity based on their market caps will also become a challenge at this particular time.
Absolutely, challenges galore. But Dr. Kaul, I'll give you the last word.
Okay, another thing which I'd like to add,
yes, sir,
when you talked about the prices being low, is that there is no constraint on capacity. So airlines have been ordering large number of aircraft which are arriving. So the capacity is going up, the demand is not there, the prices are going down.
Yes.
And they got to fill up the seats. So that's one place where the shift from railways to airlines is taking place actually, but at the cost of the airlines' bottom line. So it's a very interesting situation where passenger traffic is growing, but the profits of the airlines are declining because the prices of the tickets are going down. And that's where I don't know, it's I mean, you have adopted a globalized model of free pricing, so that's it. That's
so one more thing I wanted to elicit your opinion on. How do you look at this debate? National interest versus viability versus privatization?
Well, in the case of Air India, I think privatization is overdue because it's been running into losses, and it's the taxpayers' money which is not meant for this kind of a thing. It's not meant for airlines, meant for education and health and other sectors. So on that issue, I think I'm very clear that Air India is not an icon. It is really a national liability just now, and it has to be done away with. So this is, I think in Air India case, it's very simple that, we have no option but to sell it. It's taxpayers' money. Taxpayers' money is not meant for this purpose.
Absolutely. On that note, thank you so much for joining us on this discussion. So decks have been cleared for Air India's privatization. That's all we had for you in this edition of Policy Watch. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.